Awesome. So this is my second RubyConf from Australia. I'm super excited to be here for a second time. So thank you all. So my title isn't quite right. Normally when I do this talk, I cover a lot of the basics. But given that you guys are an advanced group, you know, despite the imposter syndrome, I'm going to take it that we don't need to cover all of those. So the title should be something more like Hackers, Fraud, and the History of Guerrilla Warfare. So, my name, Scott Feinberg. I'm the developer evangelist at WePay. We're a payment processor in the States. I live in Denver, Colorado. That's in America. And we don't believe that we are imposters of anything because we're also the best. You know, despite being a member of the U.S., I'm also a member of Ruby NZ. Turns out, thank you. Yeah, let's clap for that. Thank you. Now, the requirement was I wrote my name on a form and my email address, and now I'm a member. I'm really excited. I hope there's cards. So I throw a conference called Happiness Conf, which is it's in Boston, which is also in America, and it's a conference about developer happiness. Our CFP is open. If you go to papercall.io/happinessconf, you should submit a talk so that we can spend lots of money and fly you to America. I don't know why I'm suggesting that. So what we're going to learn today, we are going to learn the lineage of hackers and strategies to identify fraud in your apps. But first, I have a story. So I promised you that this is going to be on guerrilla warfare. So let's start with the origins of that. So the term guerrilla comes from a French term, la petite guerre. And my apologies, any words that are not American, I'm just going to pronounce them however the hell I want. What that means is small war, and the term guerrillas actually refers to Spanish irregulars who fought Napoleon in the early 1800s. But who were some of the first guerrilla fighters? So we had Mel Brooks when he defeated the English in the Tartary Rebellion. In fact, Robert the Bruce never fought a battle where he didn't have the higher ground, which is why he is known as the Guerrilla King. And then, of course, Judas Maccabee and the story of the Maccabees retaking Judea. So this is the Hebrew hammer. It's a really great movie you'll only see like late at night. They had a great strategy where they would get people to come into a small mountain path, and then they'd shoot down at them. And that's how you defeat the Romans. But today we're going to talk about a group that us and most people here are from a Western culture, and this is a group that we don't really talk about. But they are called shunyu, and I googled how to pronounce it. Shunyu is what we're going to go with. Apologies if that's completely wrong. So while you probably have never heard of them, who here has seen the movie Mulan? It's a Disney movie. I'll make a man out of you. It's really good. You should watch it, even if you don't have kids or something. So in that movie, there's that guy, Shunyu, which is weirdly similar. So that was actually based on the Chungmu, interestingly enough, but very loosely based, because it's a Disney movie. So the Shunyu were known as mountain barbarians. They were incredible horsemen who frequently humiliated the Chinese, who at the time were known as the Celestial Empire. In battle, they were a nomadic tribe, a series of tribes. They would go from place to place, plundering and raiding as they went. They had to be tracked down in order to attack them. And as this quote suggests, just like Robert the Bruce, they never fought a fair fight. And when they saw one, they ran. So the Chinese established this policy called Quin, which essentially was the Chinese would marry off a Chinese princess to the shunyu to essentially add them to their celestial empire. The Chinese would pay ever-increasing bribes to the shunyu to placate them from their plundering. This only lasted so long because they continued plundering anyways, while getting paid. The shunyu were this loose federation of tribes, so there wasn't any real leadership going on. So what the Chinese ended up doing is they established this professional army that was dispatched to the frontier to fight the shunyu in a similar nomadic manner. Now, when they first started, this worked out really well. They were able to follow them, but no one really wanted to do this job. Essentially, you become a nomad fighting a nomadic tribe and chasing them across the desert. That's not really that fun. So they eventually just went back to paying them. So the problem with the shunyu was they weren't ever concerned with occupying lands or overthrowing the dynasty. All they wanted to do was raid, and that's what made them so hard to fight. In modern day, the traits of the shunyu are very similar to how hackers work. They often work by themselves, sharing information at times, and then they might even join up into these hacker collectives to take on big challenges. That's where WillSec and Anonymous have come from. They are loosely bonded, and they have constantly changing allegiances. So why in a world where guerrilla tactics work so well, why would anyone ever employ a conventional army? Why would you give up the light footprint that people like the Viet Cong used to fight far beyond their weight class to armies like these, which are notoriously inefficient, easy to pick off, and seemingly wasteful? Just look at those hats. The best example is the Turks. So the Turks were this raiding tribe, and they eventually created this conventional army when they became the Ottoman Empire. The raiders, this is a photo of the Battle of Constantinople. The raiders would have had no chance taking on the city of Constantinople. This battle required 69 cannons, 2 27-foot guns, firing half-ton stone balls. Small raider tribes could never handle that. Essentially, when people get greedy and want to acquire land, assets, and power, they can't just raid. They have to build a conventional army. Sound like our hacker friends? They have the same cultural affinity for a raiding style of warfare. They attack primarily weak, easily conquered targets. They're willing to retreat, change targets at a moment's notice. They hold no positions, so there's no point in countering. When faced with a specific challenge, they will group up and then disperse at a moment's notice. So, what are the hordes doing to you? Well, they're going to look for a vulnerability on your site, and then when they find it, they're going to take advantage of it as quickly and as often as possible. There's no slow ramp up. You know, it's one day you're not being attacked, and the next day they're hitting you as hard as they can. And the reason for this is when they find a problem on your site, they're often going to go out to a little website on the dark web or even on a normal forum and be like, hey, look at this hack I found on this website. You should try it too. So, you know, and so you're just sort of inundated. But once this is fixed, you know, they're smart. They're going to retreat, rethink, and then find a new way to go after you until the point where the effort to find a new vulnerability on your site is worth less than the time it takes them to find it. So how do you even know if you're being raided? Well, to determine what you should be looking for, your patterns are going to be very specific to your app. Everyone's app has its own unique patterns and characteristics. To start, you need to think like a hacker. You need to get in the mind of a hacker breaking into your system. How would you break into it? What's vulnerable? What would they do? Once you know what to look for, you can start to add tracking to those specific aspects of your app. They're going to notify you when someone's trying to break in. When in question, remember to record as many data points as you can. You will never regret having too much data on what's going on in your system. So there's two types of patterns that we're going to talk about. Essential patterns are ones that you can't get around doing. These are things in your app that for someone to use it, they have to do. It's either black or white. So at WePay, if you want to take money out, this is true with any sort of payment system. You want to take out funds, you need to have a login. You need to give us your SOCH. You need to give us your address. And we need to have enough information about you from the internet to verify that you're a real person. So there's databases like Equifax, credit checks, to verify that you are real and there's enough data that we can say, okay, we're confident that we're actually giving this money to a real person. You also need a bank account. This isn't the easiest thing to set up, and it has to be one that we haven't already flagged. So this is an essential pattern because without all of these pieces of data, there's no way we're going to send you funds. And with these patterns, you can block on these. You can be as hard as you want. If someone doesn't have this data, you don't need to act and send them funds or do whatever action on your app is going to give them something of value. The other type of pattern is a non-essential pattern. These are things that you can't block on, but they might be associated with fraud. But other times, they're totally legit. Rarely can you just outright block. You're typically going to take a series of these patterns and say, okay, if this is going on, and this is going on, and this is going on, well, there might be something fishy, and we should probably look into this. So these are going to be different for you, but if someone recently breaks in and hacks into your account, they're probably going to, the first thing they're probably going to do is change the password, change the email, and they're likely logging in from a new IP. So you have all this metadata about the differences of how this person looks now than they did before. There's also going to be a change in how they're using this app. So if they've broken in and maybe, if you're dealing with money, they've only ever done a transaction of $20. And all of a sudden, you see $20,000 dropped into their bank account. Well, that's a red flag. So an example of a attack is, so if anyone here wants to break into websites, the following is a great way to start. 99% of the sites out there, and probably most of yours, have no way to defend against an attack like this. And the question is, why is this such a hard problem? Because there are no essential patterns. There's no way for someone in an attack like this to just block you out. This is an attack on all the accounts in the system. There's no sort of retry limit that's going to be met, but eventually they're going to start breaking in. Your only hope is that you have great password requirements and everyone is actually using them. So, just a step back, your passwords should follow everything here. There's a bank in the US where your password is limited to 8 characters. That's the maximum, an 8-character password. You don't want to be that guy. Let people have a password as long as they want. It doesn't make a difference. So, when you're looking at one of these horizontal password attacks, you can look at things about the type of traffic that's actually coming in. You can look at how fast people are trying to log in, from what IPs, other telltale signs that bots are looking at you. These are non-essential patterns. They don't necessarily suggest anything is wrong, but they're likely at least associated with some sort of unusual traffic event. One strategy to determine if you're being attacked and notify you is this here. You need to record everything that's going on when someone's trying to log in, and you need a way to be notified. If all you know is when your traffic spikes and you're like, oh, traffic's up today, great, that's a good thing, people are using our site. I don't know about you, but 9 times out of 10 for me, that's because a bot found me. It's not because, we went on the front of Hacker News. So we need to be recording this, and we need the data to detect any problems. We need some way to create a fingerprint of what this bot looks like. Because the IPs, they can change. But the metadata is likely to be consistent. Now, if they're smart, they can change a lot of this up. But you can oftentimes develop what looks like a fingerprint of what someone who is trying to break in is going to look like. And that's basically your only hope to keep these people out, besides having good passwords. So an example is Twitter. So let's say that there are spam bots, which used to be a huge problem. How do we stop a spam bot that's compromised someone's account? Well, you're a hacker, you break in. The likely strategy is you're going to change the password, then you're going to hook up some sort of third-party API, because you're not going to be doing this yourself. You're going to have a bot that's actually going to handle it. So they might start following a lot of new accounts. They might start tweeting out at a much higher rate than is normal. They might be tweeting out links, spam links. So all of those things are going to change, along with what hours that user is likely tweeting. So, one way to do it is just like someone changes their password and they add a third-party API. You could say, okay, that person might be fraud, we should look into that. Well, unfortunately, that's a really, really weak method, because, maybe I forgot my password and now I'm, adding on TweetDeck. That's going to catch me. Instead, you're going to want something a lot more robust. And in this case, perhaps you have some sort of whitelist, which I know Twitter actually does have, and maybe that API triggers a large amount of tweets. Maybe that's the trigger. And your data is going to be different, but something is going to give you the telltale sign of that something is wrong. There's more advanced patterns, of course. The tweets themselves could be changing. The tweet quality could be changing. Or there's just some unusual logins. There's a lot of different ways that you can train a classifier to classify that data. But you need to be collecting it in the first place to analyze that and pull it out. So what do we learn? We learn that you need to identify what your essential patterns are. These are the things that you can block on and be really strict about. You need to identify what your non-essential patterns are, determine how you want to track them and how you want to monitor them. Now, as with the Celestial Empire, we too have a way to pay our hordes. And we have websites like HackerOne and Bugcrowd where we can pay people to hack our websites for us. But instead of, stealing things and things like that, we pay them money to let us know. And this is a great way, because instead of, taking the risk of breaking into your site, I'm just going to go and look at it, find the bug, and maybe you'll give me $500. Might be lucrative, might be less, who knows? But all the big websites right now, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, they're all employing strategies like this. It doesn't cost you anything to get them started until people start finding bugs. Now, you should all be doing the basics. Read the Rails security guide. That's basically all you need. But it's a scary world, and when you're dealing with these security problems, you have a constituency that you need to keep safe, and those are your users. So, when you're thinking about identifying fraud and things like that, don't think of it as a chore. Security shouldn't be a chore. This can be fun. You can think about it more like you are Sherlock Holmes, and you are going and you are figuring out, okay, how do I get in the mind of the hacker? What might I do? So I want you to all go home, and I want you to think about what are your patterns. How do you track down those raiding hordes? And how do you be the Sherlock Holmes to keep your users safe? Thank you.